You're afraid of failure because you don't want other people to see you fail, because that could threaten your status in the group. People could judge you, criticize you, make fun of you, gossip. All could threaten your chances of survival, because you might not get mates then, because other people won't want to mate with you because you have kind of a bad brand. Everything that you do in your life runs through this evolutionary framework where you care what other people think. For whatever reason, there are certain people that are born in today's world where they just don't care as much, or they don't care at all, or some spectrum. Now, I find myself always resisting caring. I've also naturally not cared as much about whether people pay attention to what I'm doing, like from a business perspective. I don't know. That just always really bothered me. I don't know why, but that just never really bothered me. I just decided I was going to do something and I would do it. And I don't really care if it was awesome or not, or failure or success. But I still get pulled into caring. Sometimes I care about my appearance. Sometimes I might care if I, let's say something to a girl and I think she's being rude or rejecting me, quote unquote. These are things that are built into our biology. Even though I might say something to a girl, let's say out in public, a stranger, and if she rejects me, quote unquote, or is rude in some way, it's not like there's my group around me or my tribe around me that's documenting this or seeing this, and I don't even know this person. So there's actually no real repercussion, yet it is still a very sensitive thing. And most guys struggle with opening and talking to somebody that they might think is attractive, or they want to ask a question or whatever. That can be a scary proposition. For some people, doing something that might look bad to their family or their friends or their parents, etc. For some people, that is huge. For someone like me, it's never even registered. Now I have a small family and I was kind of raised in a certain way. There's also certain biological and environmental factors that have made it so that I'm just a little bit more towards that entrepreneur end of the spectrum. I don't care as much or whatever, but it can be cultivated. It can be trained. And the example of approaching an attractive woman, for example, let's say I decided I wanted to start doing that on a regular basis and I wanted to overcome my resistance, my fear, etc. Well, I would just have to do it a lot. And over time, I would get to a point, if I did it enough, where I would not care at all. There'd be no fear whatsoever. There might even be a kind of excitement that comes if somebody would try to quote unquote reject me, because then it would maybe be fun, or like it would be a challenge, etc. Same thing with entrepreneurship. Same thing with capital allocation. Generally in the world today, I mean, especially pre-internet, most people got wealthy, if they got wealthy, in like their 40s or later, 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. Because it took a long time, a lot of effort, a lot of learning, a lot of trying things, and a lot of patience to generate wealth. Now, you still need patience today, but I mean, with the internet, the way things move, you can speed that up. You can literally do something in 2 years that used to take 10, for example. But it's still the same thing. You got to throw out a lot of darts, a lot of experiments. That's actually one of the reasons that business success can be had so quickly today, is because you can hyper test things. You can throw, let's say, a bunch of money at ads, get a bunch of eyeballs, validate a product. It might have taken you a long time to do that before. You might have had to like go through the rigmarole of getting on retail shelves and then see if it sells or not, and give that months or years on end. Whereas with the internet, what accelerates business so much is the fact that you can literally buy attention and get products in front of people like never before in the history of the world. But it still comes with the same risk of failure. You could lose money. You could launch a product and tell everybody about it, and then a few months later, you're not talking about that product anymore, and people start asking you what's going on, why is that the case, etc. I generally have figured out that most people don't really care. They'll forget. Again, your social dynamic of your social circle, your family, etc. These things all matter. I mean, some people have their parents up in their business. Some people have very judgmental brothers and sisters, cousins, whatever. And it can be a real social risk to do something that doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, succeed. My opinion of failure, though, is that this is just a state of mind. The only actual failure is quitting. The only actual failure is when you stop, when you decide to not get back in the ring. Because if you fail at something, you launch a product or a business or whatever, you now have very valuable, very expensive data to learn from. That's all failure is. The famous quote by Edison is, I figured out 1,000 ways it doesn't work. I found 1,000 things that aren't going to work. And then that allowed me to reach the thing that was. Failure is learning. And if you stop at the 999th filament, yet the 1,000th is that one. It's that, I believe it's bamboo material. The 1,000th material to get that light bulb to work. If you stop at 999, you failed, but you've chosen because you stopped. And then all of the learning, the expensive education that came before the 1,000th try will have then been wasted. Entrepreneurship, starting something, failing, creating, being an artist, a creative, your job is to fail as much as you can and as fast as you can, because that's how you figure out and then create success. Some people shortchange this process because they stumble upon something or some app they create or whatever, and it's basically like striking gold, and then they're set. They are the few. They are the exception. 99.99% of entrepreneurs and anybody that creates anything that is successful does so through a shitload of trial and error, experimentation, learning, and very, very expensive lessons about the world, about the market, about people, about psychology, about themselves. It's all learning. And as long as they didn't stop, they will find some kind of success. So if you fail at something, you figure something out. You learn something. If you keep going, then you are not a failure. You will manufacture success eventually. You will find something, because even if it's not the thing you're doing, and this is where people get stuck. They think that if they start this business, that's the thing that has to succeed. That's completely and utterly ridiculous. That's not how reality works. It's basically like saying, it's the one-itis. It's this person I'm going to marry. They're perfect on paper. And then you force it for years and then you become miserable because it's not a fit. We know how hard it is to find people that we mesh with. Most of us have been in 5 to 10 relationships, and then maybe we settle on one or we have kids or whatever. Hopefully it works out. A lot of times it doesn't. It's really freaking hard. Entrepreneurship, product development, creating anything is the same exact way. You have to learn, test, iterate, and then come to a place where you've used that information and that learning to make a decision. So like I said, if that single thing you start, or even the 5th thing or the 10th thing, if that isn't a fit, even if you've thrown tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars out of it in 10 years of your life, yet on year 11, yet on $100,001, if you finally find that thing that is the success, if you find that thing that you want to do, maybe it's a different business, maybe it's this, maybe you don't want to be an entrepreneur, but you found a job you love, like whatever it is, all of that learning, that path, that expense, that hardship, all of that is the proof of work. It's the journey that led you to the place that you can call success. So you take a step back and you realize that a successful life is not about doing a specific thing. It's not about knowing what you're supposed to do. It's not about striking gold on the first pickaxe, digging into the mountain or the vein, the gold vein or whatever. I don't know what the proper gold mining analogy is, but it's about using every single step and every single bit of learning and knowledge and data that you acquire to get you to a place of success. And then the thing that people forget with this is that all of that hard work that came to get you to this point, that is necessary to appreciate the end result. Because what you see with people that are born into wealth and they never have to work a day in their life, a lot of times they're miserable because they don't have struggle. They don't have the duality that's required to have fulfillment. Because to live a great, happy life, a successful life, to be successful in business and actually enjoy that success, you had to have earned it. That's the duality of nature. And that's why people that shortchange that, people that get really, really lucky in some instances, like lottery winners, perfect example. Lottery winners, most of them end up broke and they're actually worse off than before they won the lottery because they didn't earn the money. There's no proof of work there. There's no sweat, toil, blood, learning, education. They don't know how hard it is to earn it. So then they don't respect the money they have and then they waste it. And then they usually spend more than they have. They go to debt, whatever. Without the investment of time and energy, the result that you get is meaningless. Very, very few people can bypass this principle of nature, the duality of everything. You should embrace failure because failure is how you appreciate success. If you don't know how hard it is, if you didn't struggle to acquire something, you don't have the mental wiring to appreciate success, and therefore you won't keep it. You will squander it. Or it'll make you miserable because then you won't have to work and there's no struggle and you pretty much are like existentially in a crisis. What's the meaning of life? Whatever. And then that can be a very, very tough thing to deal with. A lot of people don't understand that because they've never experienced that. A lot of people think, oh, money solves everything. Ask Biggie Smalls. Ask Tupac. More money, more problems, as Mr. Biggie said. Money does not solve everything. Proof of work. Duality, learning, education, and then keep going. That's what failure is. Get the Better Human newsletter over at thebetterhuman.co. 2 quality emails a week. I'll see you in the next one.